Oh, this week finally got round to having a look at my Bedford Troop Transport. Um, I've decided that I'm going to be using this one for my British Army. Like some of the other vehicles I've been making of late, I did take out all the figures that come with this, and I'm painting them up separately so I can just focus on building the vehicle, and then when I get to the stage, before I close in the cab or close in the back, I can put the troops in place. So let's just crack it open and have a look what we've got. Clearly there's a few different options for how you're going to do it, but obviously I'll be doing it for Normandy, so I'll be going with this livery probably, or something very similar. Looks like a fairly extensive assembly guide. Right, it's first thing I'm noticing is it's talking about two different levels of build. That the parts highlighted in red can be omitted if you just want a simple tabletop ready assembly. Yeah, I can kind of understand that if it, just taking the figures out, but I don't really want to be taking parts out that are meant to be there. I'm sure they're not really necessary, but if they're going to come as part of the kit, I really want to use them. That's just me really being finicky. It just seems, just seems like a waste of the parts, really. So, with that in mind, I'm going to start from the beginning and I'm going to go for a complete build, I think. The only thing that I've got to avoid is closing anything down, because obviously until I've actually primed it, I can't put, there's any soldiers that I pre-paint in there. So, right. So what I'm going to do is I'll crack this open. I'll get out the first parts that we need for, part one of the build. And I think the best way for me to capture it, so I'm not fiddling around and obscuring the view, is I'll show it in a series of photographs, and then you'll gradually see it coming together, and that way you'll see more clearly where the parts have been fitted. Right, I'll bring you back when we start. Right, so I've clipped off the first parts, and I'll get these put together first. So this is it. Went together fairly simple, nothing to report on that bit really. Now I'm painting this early. I'll explain a bit more later. I'll just get these other parts out and the doors and everything. I'm going to paint some of these bits separate. The underneath side I've fitted on and painted, but the others I'm going to spray them separately because I need to put them together afterwards. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I want to put some windows in with some spare plastic. So I've put a window screen in, and then as you can see on the driver's side I've got a wound down window. I will be over painting this, possibly with a Vallejo Russian uniform to make it a bit darker. But I wanted to make sure the inside of the cab was all painted up and the seats and everything as well. And then the other thing that I did change was the roof. Originally I was going, with this opening, but I decided I preferred the closed one, so I quickly sprayed up that and put that on. Right, I'll get back to the photographs and we'll slowly put the rest together. Right, so it's time to start putting the back part of the truck together. So these are the parts I'm going to need. And this is where you're starting to fit some of the optional extras, like the struts that support the seats. They went in relatively easy, but obviously you've got to manoeuvre them when it comes to putting these benches in on top of them to make sure they match up to the indents. That said, a bit of patience. It wasn't as tricky as I thought it would be. So I'm glad I've done it. Right, turn my attention to the underside now. So I've clicked up all the bits for that. First thing is to get the mudguard struts in place on the mud flaps, and then put those in position. And then you can see that I've started sticking all the other parts underneath. Again, nothing complicated. Now we start to build up the undercarriage and the wheel support. The actual putting of the prop shafts and everything, that's a little bit more tricky. Once done, it's time to give it its base coat of army green. Right, now that we've got it together, I can look at painting on the colours that I'm looking for before I put the final bit together. So for the bodywork, I'm going to give it a brush over of this US dark green Vallejo. Right, now that I've done the roof, I'm going to do exactly the same on the truck and paint all of the green areas over very lightly with this US dark green, just to take it down to that darker colour. Right, I'll bring you back when it's finished. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to be using some Army Painter matte black, and I will be, dabbing this on when it comes to doing the camouflage pattern. But where it's on this cab at the top, I want to paint it on because that way I can keep a better control of it. And obviously with me having gone to the trouble of putting the plastic windows in, the last thing I want to do is dab a bit of black onto that. Right, the next thing that we need to do, let me just move it over a little bit and close in. There you go. Is we need to blend in that painting with this sponge work. Right, so I've added the black camo to it now. I'm trying to make it a bit random. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slowly start painting up, you know, things like the tyres and the exhaust and, you know, just all the little bits, spotlights. So I'm going to work my way through that slowly. Obviously, you know, they've built this, they put this kit out with view to it being like a display model, because one thing is for sure, when it comes to these sticking out wing mirrors, I don't know how many games they're going to survive really, but I'm putting them on there for now. Try and be careful with it, but ultimately I suppose if it comes off, it won't be a tragedy, but I want to at least start with it together. But they're very fragile for gameplay. I expect that's really the reason why they've, you know, put so many items as optional. So, but I do like the look of this truck. Anyway, I'm going to crack on and start painting these tyres. I want to get all of the internal bits painted where I need to before I close it up and try and fit the cab. It's been an unusual way building the model, to be fair, because obviously I normally just build it and then paint it, but it's one of them really where I've had to do it this way to get to some of the detail that I wanted to do. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on painting these, and when I move on to the next thing I'll bring you back. Right, so I've painted the tyres, and I've also painted some of the prop shafts and everything underneath it, and the spare tyre. And then I've just tidied up a little bit of the bodywork as well. Took the black down a little bit more. And what I'm going to do now while that's drying is I'm going to paint these canvas pieces on the roof that drop down, and I'm going to be using some Baron Dune by War Paints for that. So I'll just make a start. Probably going to need a couple of coats this, because obviously I'm going over a darker colour, so but you can see what it's going to look like. Obviously I'll probably apply a wash later on to get into all the creases, otherwise it's going to look a little bit too bright. But I'll crack on with the rest of that, and then I'll bring you back. So I've completed the canvas sheets from the side, but I've just got to paint these blacks, you know, the straps that are holding them up in place, which I'm going to do in a minute. But I've also finished off the last bit of these troops that are going to go inside it. So I'm going to quickly paint these straps, and then basically what I'll do is I'll glue in some of these seated figures into the back. Because I've painted it, I'll probably use a spot of super glue. and then I'll bring you back, show you what that looks like before we start the final assembly part. Right, back in a second. Right, so I've managed to get the soldiers all in place. Just got to get the standing up one with his Bren gun, and then I can go about getting the roof on top and getting that in position. But it's starting to come together now. Right. So most of the paintings, well, all of the paintings done. But I've given it a bit of a wash as well in places, just to bring out a bit more detail. And what I'm going to do now, before I add any weathering, is I'm going to put all the transfers on. And as you can probably see in the background, I've been getting down all my other Allied vehicles, mainly the British, obviously. And I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm tallying it up with them really, so it'll fit in. So that's what I've got them down for. So let's start applying the transfers. I won't drag you through the whole process because I know you've seen me do it before. I'm going to start with the one on the top. And I've just got my trusty brush and my little silicone sculpting tool. Over slightly. Let's get it centralised. Right. A little bit of tissue just to take the excess water off. There we go, that's the first one in place. Right, I'll get the rest added off camera, and then I'll bring it back because then we can start looking at the weathering itself. Right, the transfers are all on now, look. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the weathering process. First thing I want to do is put on some of this thick mud, but I'm really going to take it a bit easy. I'm not going to go too mad. I'm going to put a bit behind these wheels here. Bit on some of the mud guard. Same on the other side. You see what I'm doing now? I'm just putting a small amount on the tyres. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a little bit of this Vallejo splash mud, but then I'm going to water it down because I don't want it to be, you know, dried thick mud. I want it to be more of a, you know, dirty road, splashed up rainwater type mud. So I want it quite thin. There's one other thing that I want to do, and that's just add a little bit of rust underneath. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. It's just a hint of it there, look. And when that dries, it'll be even less noticeable, but it'll be there. Right, I'm going to let that dry now, and then I'll just check it once it's dry, see if there's any other little bits that I want to add, but it's looking pretty good now, and I'm sure once it's dried it'll have the effect that I'm looking for. Right, I'll bring you back in a minute. Right, so here it is. It's all finished now. It's had 2 coats of varnish, but to be fair, it's not totally dry, so you'll forgive me if I don't handle it. But I just thought what I'd do now is I'd take a few photographs, and you know, we can wind up the video with those as normal. But it's it wasn't a particularly complicated build, a bit fiddly here and there really, but the only thing, I mean, it looks the part and I like it. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed about is the fact that you can't see much of the actual troops in there. And I only say that because it took all that effort to paint them. And I was ever so careful about the faces and everything else on them. So, you know, a bit disappointed that you can't see much of them. But at the end of the day, that's not important, is it? It's just to represent the vehicle. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. The only other thing, you know, like they've said, you know, you've got different ways of building this. You can leave a lot of parts out that I didn't. I've used everything. The only thing that I can see that's really obviously going to go, you know, break off the moment you start using it is these two extended wing mirrors. I have knocked them off already, so the chances of me not knocking them off during a game, I mean, you've only got to pick it up and catch it and you've broke it off. But to be fair, you know, it's bound to when it's something as fragile as that. So what I'll probably do is, if they do break off on me and I repair them and they break off again, I should just take them off altogether and paint over it, because it's not going to affect the overall look of the model. Anyway, I'll take some pictures and we'll wind this video up. Right, so let's just take a quick look underneath. Not much to see, but you can see how that rust has dried. I think the only thing about this model, if I built another one, is I'd probably have it open next time, you know, so you can see the troops more. But on the whole, I'm pretty pleased with the way it looks. And I did want one, you know, that looked like the box model. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you found it, you know, interesting. And if you have liked it, you know, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Or even subscribing for when the next video drops. And if you've got any questions, you know, feel free to drop them below. Right. I'll see you again next week. Bye.